Coming up, the New York Football Giants did not play over the weekend, but they did see their playoff chances, their top draft pick aspirations, all take incremental steps forward or backwards, depending on where your desires lie. We talk about that, the return of Tyrod Taylor, and one pressing question from Andrew Makowitz, all coming up next. Yes, sir. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where you know we are your hosts. Over here, Adam Arbrecht. Over there, Andrew Makowitz. Following the weekend that was, where we didn't have to stress, Andrew, about what the Giants were doing over the weekend and what it all meant, because they didn't play. Bye week. How'd you spend yours?
Hanging out with the family, catching up on some things. It's unfortunate that it's basically rained every Sunday in the New York, New Jersey area for like the last, I don't know, 6 months. So
Mm-hmm.
even on a day where like you could get outside, touch grass, walk around, like it was pouring rain. So a lot of inside time, but hey, at least the Giants didn't lose this weekend, right?
Giants didn't lose. Got to give that for them. On the other side of it, obviously, there's a handful of games that didn't go their way last week, leading into the bye week for the Giants. We talked about, hey, there's a handful of games to watch. The Giants are going to play the Rams. They're going to play the Packers coming out of the bye. They're going to play the Saints straight up, right? All these things saying, hey, at least we can have the fun discussion of being in that picture. The travesty of it all is that the Packers won. And we're going to talk about them a little bit more deeply here in a second since they're the next matchup. The Rams also won. And Seattle, the team that we said, oh, yeah, they can tumble. Well, they are tumbling, but the Buccaneers also got a win for themselves as well. And even though the Saints lost, the Giants remain there 4-8, still having 5 teams, including that seventh wild card position between them and any type of hope. Ultimately, Andy, the big one for me, as you were talking before we started, is the Green Bay Packers because they're the next matchup. And, buddy, it's bittersweet because I'm being validated on my opinion and perspective on Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers, and it couldn't be coming at a worse time for the Giants.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, listen, we talk about the mixed bag. You had the Minnesota Vikings on a bye, so they kind of just remained neutral after their Monday night debacle against the Bears. But yeah, to your point, Adam, you have the Saints losing, which is good for the Giants. You had the Seahawks losing to the Cowboys, which was good for the Giants. But then there's big wins. The Packers were a touchdown or more underdog against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they went out and looked like a complete team. And to your point, Jordan Love looked great. He was making all the throws, even when there was pressure. If he was throwing the ball up, he was putting it in positions where like only his guy could get to the ball. He played great, and that's a bigger concern for the Giants because you look at all these games that are coming up, and you're saying, well, they're a 500 team just like the Giants, so we should have a shot. When in fact the Green Bay Packers are a 500 team, but they look like they may have a franchise quarterback who's progressing rather than regressing right now.
Yeah, and it's funny too, man. Like, part of me did think about because the Green Bay Packers, when you go and look at their season, it just kind of was this hodgepodge. Like at first, I think the first couple of weeks looked okay, and then there's the regression of Jordan Love, and then as you mentioned, now he's building himself back up. And I think it does remind me, if you're on the positive side of the Giants fan base, at any point early in this season when all the struggles were going on and some guys are coming in and out of the lineup, it's like, we'll just wait, right? If we can get healthy, if you can start to get on a run. The NFL season goes by fast, but there are a lot of games and a 2-week stretch where you win back to back. I mean, the Giants did that, got to 4-8, and you go, oh man, what could have been? Same thing for the Packers. All of a sudden, they're 6-6. They're in the thick of the playoff hunt. And comparing them to Seattle, there's a team that started the year, you thought, okay, right back kind of where they left off last season. Hasn't quite broken their way, and they could be on the outside looking in. So it's unfortunate, I feel like, that the Giants don't have that still on the table for them of like, well, you never know. Because the one thing you can't account for, as we saw more quarterbacks go down this weekend, is once you lose critical players, and whatever Daniel Jones is or is not, when your starting quarterback goes down, it changes the dynamic of what your team's going to be, let alone offensive tackles, right? Let alone key defensive players as well. So it's I don't know, good for the Packers, I guess, but a bummer for me.
Well, but listen, the silver lining is this. We talked about it on our last show. The Giants, in an ideal scenario, if you want the Giants to try to fight to make a playoff berth or grab the last playoff spot, you want to be playing the teams that are directly in front of you
Still got
because you
that.
not only get a win, but then you can also guarantee a loss if you do that, right? And so while the Packers looked great, they come up and they play the Giants this upcoming week. And if the Giants win that game, the Packers are only one game ahead of the Giants, and the Giants would have the head-to-head if just the two of them finish in that last spot. And that's the thing about having all these games is we talk about the Saints, we talk about the Rams, we talk about the Packers. All of those games are in front of the Giants where tiebreakers can matter, and you're getting closer to being able to draw close to them in terms of the record. So it wasn't the best situation for the Giants, but we still know what the task is at hand, Adam. The Giants have to go at least 4-1, if not 5-0, in order to have
Yeah.
any chance of really making the playoffs, right?
Yeah, and by the way, this upcoming week, we'll get into it later on, but when you think about the fact that you're going to have the Rams playing the Ravens and you're going to have the Seahawks playing the 49ers, you can at least, look out there and squint and see some scheduled losses maybe coming for other teams. And then maybe you're pulling for the Vikings as they'll be going to the Raiders. You're hoping that Las Vegas can do you a little bit of a favor there as well. Other games like Falcons and Bucks going head to head should be a fun one to watch too. We'll talk about that more as the week unravels. The other side of this, just quickly, before we turn our attention over to the Tyrod Taylor news, is the other way that these things go, which is looking up the board here in the draft. We're nothing if not even tempered about the expectations of the fan base. Giants currently sit there in the NFL Tankathon draft at 7th overall. You're just behind the Jets now, behind Chicago, behind Washington. But there's the fun one. Arizona won a game. Now, I'm sure 1,000%, Andy, that there is going to be fans out there that go, was that worth it? Was that second half beautiful comeback really worth it? Because the Giants could have 3 wins right now and be in a much different position. New England's going to play the Pittsburgh Steelers this week without Kenny Pickett now as he went down over the weekend. So there's a chance that some teams in front of them are going to either win some games, lose some games. But you have a lot of 4-win teams in the mix. Now Arizona at least gets in there. So listen, you dance on both sides of the line here. You hope the Giants win and it keeps making the top of that draft board less and less critical for them. And if they were to lose, you find yourself mucking it up, still living on the fringe of a top 6, top 5 kind of pick.
Adam, keep in mind there are only 3 teams that have less wins than the New York Giants on their
That's
schedule
crazy.
right now, right? Like there's only literally 3 teams. Carolina Panthers, who they just got eliminated from the playoffs. I know you're very upset. I know you thought that they could maybe go on a run here, Adam. I'm sorry to tell you that. You obviously have the
Put a
New
lot of
England
money on that,
Patriots.
Andy. Christmas is going to be a
I
little
just had to
light.
bring it up. Yeah. They're still going to fight hard with their interim coach and their crazy owner.
That's right.
You have the New England Patriots, who the Giants just beat, only having 2 wins. They're 2-10, and you have those Arizona Cardinals, who are 3-10. Those are the only teams. Then you get into this huge jumble and hodgepodge of teams like the Titans and the Jets and the Commanders and the Bears and our New York Football Giants as the teams with 4 wins. To have a realistic shot of being in the top 5, it feels like you need to have about 4 wins or less. So if the Giants end up losing all their games, they finish in the top 5. I think if the Giants win all their 5 games, they're in the playoffs. The funny thing that's going to happen between all this, Adam, is they're going to win like 2 games. They're going to have like the 9th pick in the draft, and they're going to miss out on the playoffs. And neither side is going to be happy with what the results are.
No, and that's probably, they always say, listen, if everyone's unhappy, then you probably did it the right way. So maybe the Giants are just threading that beautiful needle for the fan base as well. Right now, by the way, you can go over and look at this too. I know this is like getting that mile deep that Andy doesn't really want to do at the moment, but I'll even break the hearts of Giants fans a little bit deeper. Let's say, oh, you wanted the quarterback. Sorry, I know you fell out of that. I know. Okay, now it's about Marvin Harrison Jr. Sorry, maybe not going to be that. Right now, take a look at Malik Neighbors, because that's who you're going to be talking about at the 7th overall pick in the mock draft. You have 4 wide receivers in the top 15 currently on the big boards across a lot of these different websites. So you're thinking about weapons, you're thinking about offensive line, all that good stuff. Investigate those. We will start to highlight them as we get to the back end of the season, but at least 1 more week or 2 to go before we effectively shut down the, quote, competitive nature of the Giants season. The other news then is Tyrod Taylor. This guy, open it up, baby. Walk over to your patio, kick open those French doors, because his window is wide open to return, Andrew.
It is. It is indeed. And the Giants made a few corresponding moves on top of that.
This one hurt. This one
What's
hurt.
up?
Jacob Eason. This is his thing.
Yeah,
This is his thing here.
I know.
It's a
Big
book.
promise. You off the pod, you told me about big things were going to happen for Jacob Eason. Unfortunately, he was released from the practice squad. Matt Barkley was waived, but it sounds like everyone thinks he'll just re-sign with the practice squad and kind of be the emergency quarterback. And what this tells you, Adam, because they opened all this up and made these corresponding moves, is that Tyrod Taylor at least is going to be available in an emergency QB or a backup position now that he is officially healthy. And we talked about it on the podcast last time. who would you rather have, Tyrod Taylor versus Tommy DeVito? There's a lot of different competing interests, and people have different feelings about it. I have one question for you about this. We went back
Okay.
and forth about like developing young talent and doing some of these different ancillary things. My question to you is this, Adam. If you had a gun to your head and this was a playoff game and you said the Giants have to win this playoff game for you to survive, which quarterback are you picking to be responsible for your fate in that game?
I think it's still Tyrod Taylor. Like, Tommy DeVito. I, I ask me this question next week, right? Because after you play the Packers, who were supposed to have a really good defense coming into the year, kind of struggled a little bit. Now the offense is starting to click. Like, I do want to see Tommy DeVito in a not 10-7 shootout. I want to see Tommy DeVito like in a 20s, kind of scoring shootout where the requirement here is, hey, you're down 10, you're down 3, you're down 7, right? You're up 3, managing game scenarios like that where there's some expectation that the opposition can come out and really move the ball around. Maybe this week will kind of dissuade all that. But I mean, Tyrod still he has a body of work. I'm not putting him in the Hall of Fame, but we know that he's capable of playing clean football. We saw him move the ball really well over a couple of games before he went down with his injury. I think you still go with the veteran. If we're talking about like saving your season, right? Saving your playoff season, you're going to go with the veteran. You're not going to go with the guy that you think could be your future backup, does have some upside. No NFL team or coach is going to take that type of route.
I couldn't agree more. It was something that I thought about this morning. Like if it's a must-win game, if it's an absolute must-win game, you have to win the game.
Then all
You
the
you
good
would pick
vibes go out the door.
you pick Tyrod Taylor, right? You have to win the game. You go with the guy that has done it before, has made the pro. I believe he's made the Pro Bowl before. Like you got to go with the guy that's done it and been proven. And this is the point about the NFL that we sometimes forget. We're like, oh, just go with the young guy, develop him. Who cares if you win games? It's like, well, these coaches, when they get fired and they're like, well, they have a 20-38 record. They stink.
Right,
It's
right,
like,
right.
you remember those 6 or 8 games that they lost because all of you wanted them to lose? Now you're holding it against them when it comes time. Like, should we keep them? Should they get another job? Like, these things matter to these coaches. And until the Giants are eliminated from playoff consideration, they have to go with whatever quarterback gives them the best chance to win that game in front of them. We talk about this being like a one game at a time league, which it really is. If the Giants beat the Packers and Tyrod Taylor is a starter, he has to continue to play until someone says you are mathematically eliminated, and then you can do whatever you want.
Of course, 100%. By the way, do you know what Tyrod Taylor's career record is as a starting quarterback? 89 games.
89 games. I'm going to say he's 50-39.
Wow, wow. It was bullish by Andy. 45, 43, and 1. And quite frankly, your bullish nature actually kind of diminished some of the value of that statement. But he has a winning record as a starting quarterback, and we know he's Mr. Play It Safe, right? He's not a guy that's going to take many risks. He only averages 127.8 yards per game as a starting quarterback, but his touchdown interception ratio 62-26. Like 89 games, right? What are we talking about? As good as Tommy DeVito, that's been a great story. This is what you look at when you're a head coach. And just to your point about records, right? Tyrod Taylor, he wants a chance to make it 46, 43 and 1, 47, 43 and 1. Because even though we think, all right, his time with the New York Football Giants is going to be over, he's 33, 34 years old. We just saw 98-year-old Joe Flacco step onto the field for the Cleveland Browns. Like, teams are going, he's going to get a job. The Giants, it's about spending the money on a player like that at this age, at this stage of the franchise. But Tyrod Taylor is going to be a backup quarterback somewhere next year. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So he's also just trying to put that foot forward. I'm healthy. I'm ready to go. So it's just numbers matter, man. Like the data matters in a lot of these situations.
It really does. And that's why when you look at it, he's got an over 500 record. Tommy DeVito has filled in admirably, but when push comes to shove and Brian Dable has to win games to keep the locker room happy, to kind of make sure people aren't shining the light in all the controversies with like what's happening and who likes him and who doesn't inside the building when you're talking about the coordinators, you have to win football games to really continue to have the guys buy in the locker room. Once everything's mathematically eliminated, like I said, then the organization can make decisions on what's best for the organization moving forward. But right now, the Giants are still alive. Go out and win football games. And if they think Tyrod Taylor gives them that chance and they feel the same way that we do, I have no problem if they want to go back to Tyrod, even though I like seeing what Tommy DeVito has.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. And by the way, you know what? There's something I want to get to on that in just here in 1 second. But let's take a little break to give your alma mater a little bit of a tip of the cap, Andy. You might not know this, Andrew, because I subscribe to the newsletter. I'm up with the alumni. Syracuse is targeting New York Football Giants running backs coach Jeff Nixon to become the school's next offensive coordinator. He was the former offensive coordinator and play caller at Baylor under one Matt Rule. Are you excited about this for the Cuse?
Adam, I'm so glad that you brought this up because
Thank
I have been following this intently. We're going to go on a little tangent, but it is
you. Yeah.
Tommy DeVito
Just a
related
little
because he
further
was a
north. Just
Syracuse.
a little further north.
Just a little further north, the Meadowlands in East Rutherford is considered Syracuse South for
Mhm.
all alumni that have gone there. It's kind of like our hotbed little place.
Oh,
We played in
jeez.
so many pinstripe bowls there, in football that I can only imagine. Why would people not be rooting for Syracuse? But the short and sweet of it is Camden's own Fran Brown. He was the former defensive back coach at University of Georgia, number one recruiter in the entire country, decided to take the job at Syracuse, and he's pulling in all the guys that he had success with at Baylor as well, Texas A&M and other places. I'm really excited for the future at Syracuse. You figure like we could be the best team in the Northeast, not named Penn State, right? Like
Mhm.
Syracuse has the brand name. They've had Heisman Trophy winners. They've won a national championship. Like, couldn't Syracuse basically be the top spot for anyone from like Maryland all the way up to Maine and over like across Canada? Like, why not Syracuse? So for me, I'm very excited about what's happening up there. So thank you for asking because I've been reading a whole lot about this lately.
And I had heard, yeah, Andy was going to be up for a couple of spots, maybe on that as well. Some success, they reach into the student pool. They get some, they just if they come knocking, Andy, we'll understand if you need to kind of parse your time a little bit.
Well, they knew about the X's and O's that we break down on OGP. They're like, I could use someone like that in the building, and it's an alumni. So, if I have to leave, I'll give you fair advance notice, Adam.
Okay.
But as of right now, I'm still mulling my options here.
The X's, the O's, the Y's, the Z's, the W's. Now, the other thing here, coming back over to this, because I wanted to ask this, or maybe it's ask a question and point something out. There is something interesting about Boomer Esiason, and everyone listens to Boomer and Geo in the morning, I'm sure. He said when the possibility of Tommy DeVito being benched in favor of Tyrod Taylor, quote, this would be one of the dumbest things Brian Dable could ever do is not play Tommy DeVito. Taylor's contract is up at the end of the year, and we need to find out whether or not Tommy DeVito can be the backup to Daniel Jones. Now, like that part of it, I think you and I have talked about, like we appreciate the evaluation process of this thing. By the way, here's the beauty of it. One half through this game against Green Bay, you can go to Tommy DeVito, right? When the game is out of reach, you can go to him. The next week, you can go to there's still a number of games left here. The one part I could take away is like I do appreciate the value of saying, like I said, I want to see him play against, in a big game situation where it's a back and forth battle, right? Give me different scenarios for him. So I can appreciate that. But it does tie into the idea because he mentioned Brian Dable and saying this would be a terrible idea. Have you already seen things over the last few weeks from Tommy DeVito that was a reminder of, oh, right, the theory was Brian Dable can turn quarterbacks in from average to elite, from backups to starters. And is there something about the system and the process that they took Tommy DeVito through that says, okay, not only do we see that he is capable of doing that for maybe our future quarterback, do we reflect on Daniel Jones at all and what he did or did not accomplish early in the season?
Yeah, I mean, look at the progression of Tommy DeVito when he came in the Jets game, albeit in a loss for Tyrod Taylor.
Sure.
He threw for -1 yards. He had -9 total yards based on all like the sacks and tackles, passing. It was horrific. It was like the coaches did not want him to throw a forward pass. And when you think about where that was, some of the deep shots that he was making in the last game to Jalen Hyatt, it looks like it's night and day. And you can see
Mm-hmm.
coaching matters because 5, 6 weeks ago, Tommy DeVito was not ready to throw a forward pass. Now he's giving Jalen Hyatt his first 100-yard game. So there
Right.
is this progression, and it does make you think, wow, if they could do that with an undrafted free agent, off the street, and they can teach him and learn him and develop him. Imagine someone with a superior athletic skill set that may be someone that you could target in the early rounds. What could they do by shaping and molding that person into the quarterback that they want to be? So I totally agree with that sentiment, and it's exciting for Giant fans to think about that. It also makes you think like if they could take Daniel Jones from what he was and make the playoffs and win a playoff game, like, is there another level that they could take him to, or do you honestly think that it's just maxed out whatever skill set Daniel Jones has? That's something for them to decide as well.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I don't know, man. It's weird because we always associate. I mean, listen, again, do I think that Tommy DeVito can be the backup quarterback for the Giants next year? Yeah, possibly. Right. But so much of this is like pedigree and draft stock and measurables. All of these things like inundate your mind with what is supposed to be. And then you get those fluke players that come out of nowhere to become, starters and to become Pro Bowlers and to become guys that take teams on deep playoff runs. And then you also get the guys in the top 5 and 10 of the draft that just fizzle out and fade and never quite achieve what they're supposed to be. So expectations is always the weight here. To close out just on this note here around Andrew Thomas, and this is just, again, it's reflective of the season. Andrew Thomas, who watched that, by the way, there's articles up about like, oh, Andrew Thomas endures rough weekend watching Georgia fall out of whatever playoff picture for the college, blah, blah, blah. Like, I tell you one thing I don't like. If you're trying to sell me that this team is staying locked in, then guess what? Don't have reports about what the players think about their college teams and how they do as you're winding down the back end of an NFL season. But Thomas first said that, I'm paraphrasing here, that NFL season doesn't truly start until after Thanksgiving. And I can make the case that if you win more games before Thanksgiving, it helps you just as much after. So he said, we still have division games. That's Philadelphia. And we still have a lot of football to play in front of us. But then he also added in the caveat of, this is also just a dream of everyone's lives to be able to be a professional football player and go out there and play every Sunday. So even just that is really great. I don't know what needle he was trying to thread, but it feels like he put himself into a knot there because it's like, it doesn't start till after the play. And you're going to need to remind everybody about last year too. But it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't start till after Thanksgiving. Well, when you're 4-8, guess what? It may not start until after Thanksgiving, but you're effectively down in the basement and you're trying to unlock the cellar door so you can come up and have some pie with everybody. Now you have to fight this battle that everyone feels like is all but lost, combined with, and by the way, I just like to get out there and play some football.
Yeah, clearly it's conflicting statements because
And we
last
all
season
love Andrew Thomas, so everybody calm down.
Yeah, of course. He's trying to give the diplomatic answer saying like, listen, it really doesn't start until you get into the nitty-gritty after Thanksgiving, when the Giants have already played, I don't know, 66% of their division games already. So like if you're saying that it hasn't started yet, it's more than it's 2/3 of the way through in terms of the division. Also,
Right.
when you think about it, it's like the Giants need to win out from here on out in order to make the playoffs. And as you mentioned, Adam, the thing we were talking about pre-show is like, I don't remember them saying this, and maybe I'm wrong. And please, any of the OGP listeners, let us know if I am wrong.
Talk to us.
I don't remember when they had a really good start to the season, everyone's saying like, oh, like that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is after Thanksgiving when we went on our skid and we saved our season by beating the Colts, who weren't playing for anything. Like, I don't remember that ever being a topic of discussion. But I get it. As a leader, Andrew Thomas is saying these games are still important. I'm still in it.
100%.
Then he's like, but then I also just like getting those reps in too. You're like, I could have used without that one. Just say like these games are
exactly.
important. We have a chance to make the playoffs. Take every game one game at a time, and we'll see where the chips fall afterwards. But they're like, yeah, but it's good to get some good cardio in, Especially
honestly, I'm an offensive lineman, so it's just good for me to get the exercise. Honestly, if I don't get my steps in, I might as well do it on a football field. F it. Let's just do it on a field. And hey, listen, if there's a score and we win and things, that's great. That's great. But also, look at me. I'm a husky gentleman. Bottom line is, guys, all week long, we're going to be looking ahead to this Green Bay Packers game. This is going to be an example of catching a team probably at the wrong time for the New York Football Giants. Andy just mentioned a year ago, Giants caught a lot of breaks in the back half of that season to get them into that playoff picture. Are there breaks for Big Blue coming against Green Bay? We'll take a look at some of their recent matchups and how they've performed. We'll discuss what a disaster the Thursday night matchup is going to be between New England and Pittsburgh. We'll get into all of these things throughout the course of this week, including our official game preview and picks, along with our kind of little FanDuel projections, give you some tidbits. Jalen Hyatt over 100. Until then, though, you get over to YouTube and you subscribe to the One Giant Podcast. You get us on your podcast feed wherever you get those needs fulfilled. You get over to Twitter at One Giant Podcast, at AndyMac214, and at Adam Armbrecht. Until next time, as Andrew Makowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.